They want 25 bucks for that. Watch this.
Alright guys, so I finally found a piece of software that I can actually use. This one is called FreeCAD. It's still currently in a beta stage, but for my purposes it works just fine. And I've been making a lot of things using this program to try to figure out how to work this thing, and this happens to be one of them. Now what this is a camera mount that either clamps onto a rifle scope or a telescope or any sort of scope really, as long as the thing fits. Now, I didn't feel like shelling out $20 some for a pre-made rifle scope mount because it really doesn't have much use for me other than making this one video. So I figured why not just, test my skill a little bit and 3D model something out of it.
Alright, so with all your parts printed out, you will need a screwdriver and quite a few machine screws to put this thing together. Don't worry, I have all the screws you need listed out in link to Thingiverse. So have a look at that if you plan on printing out one of these. So the first thing we can assemble will probably be these two pieces. These are the travel arms for where you're going to mount your camera. Now, this piece has two indexing pieces. That just simply slides into the slot there, and that pretty much just guides it, prevents it from twisting around. You can take a 1/4 inch machine screw along with a wing nut and the washer that fits it, and that pretty much bolts that into place. Then you take this piece, take a 1224 by 1/2 inch and a square nut. Put the square nut in here. It just sort of pressure fits into it. It should be tight enough. If not, don't just hold it in place and screw this into place. Now I'll explain what this does later. Now you want to take a 1/4 inch by 1/2 inch machine bolt and and just thread it into this hole up front here. Now you will have to cut the threads in yourself, but this is plastic, so it's fairly soft. And this is where that screwdriver comes in hand. Once you've got the threads cut, just back it off a little bit and just simply slip this thing over this. Now this screw here is for tightening this piece to that arm, and this screw on the front helps lock down the whole tilting thing that happens. Now I wouldn't wrench this one down too tight because you do run the risk of ripping this thing out or puncturing the plastic or whatever have you. So just tighten this thing down enough to keep it from moving, back and forth this way. Now for this piece, you may or may not have to file this down to get it to fit. That depends on how well your printer prints, but for me, it slipped in pretty easily. Now you want to take a 1224 bolt. This is 2.5 inches long, I believe. Slide this in the other side. Put the wing nut in there. Let's not forget that now. And that's that. Now you'll need one of these. Now this is one of those tripod mounts for a phone. I'll have a link where you can buy one of these in the description. You can check that out. Then you also need yet another 1/4 inch bolt. This one's, I believe, 1.5 inches. You also need a wing nut and a washer that go with it. And this attaches just by simply sliding into the top there. And after that, just use your washer and tighten down the connection. And that's it. So this thing, fairly easy to put together, just a few nuts and bolts. Although you might have to buy this thing, unless you have one lying around from like a selfie stick or something. Of course you'll need it, your phone. This thing isn't meant to take a very heavy camera, so something the size of your phone, even then it flexes a little bit just because of the material that's made out of. But let's get this thing mounted onto a gun and see how well this thing actually performs. Alright, so we're back from that shooting test. This is what the whole mount looks like when attached to the gun itself. Of course, you'd have whatever phone you'd have attached to this thing. Now, I was shooting a new type of pellet. It would be the Gamo rockets. Now, these did surprisingly well at 10 yards. So these pellets show some promise. Now, those two up there, those are probably me, because there's a few things I need to talk about with this mount. So the first thing is trying to find your crosshairs through your camera lens. That proved to be a lot more difficult than I originally thought. The second problem would be the camera being able to see its own reflection in your lens. Now this is 3D printed plastic. It's not the most robust thing in the world, so I wouldn't go putting like your heavy DSLR or a really expensive phone on this thing. I'd probably put on like a GoPro or something cheap like that. Now would I go mounting this thing onto like a centerfire rifle? Absolutely not. In fact, I would worry about mounting this thing onto a spring gun. Forget the mount on the spring gun, how about your phone? I don't think there's many cameras out there that can actually take that sort of recoil. So really with a mount like this, you're pretty much limited to like airsoft guns, multi-pump guns, PCPs. But then again, if you have a PCP, why not just grab an actual mount? Because at that point, an actual mount is just a drop in the bucket. So if you happen to have a 3D printer lying around and you want to give this whole scope cam a shot, this might be your only bet, because I have yet to see anyone else upload a 3D file for something like this.